Awesome, guys. If you have your Bibles with you, you can open on up to Matthew chapter 7. You know, it is amazing this morning to be able to get all together. Even just the singing had that extra little pump right there. It was just really, really encouraging. I did send out the lesson via email, so you can follow that along. But outside of that, to be honest, we're just going to be mostly in Matthew 7 a little bit, and then Matthew 8. You know, starting off with a little bit of exercise, I'm going to say a few different things, but every time I preach these next little quotes, I want you guys to go crazy. Okay. Completely shocked, freak out, just like, this is just the best thing I've ever preached. Okay. Happiness can only be bought by the poor. Loving your friends is a given. Loving your enemies is a standard. Right there. When you lust, you've already given up your innocence. Forgive and forget always. Now you don't have to do it anymore. But to be honest, a lot of quotes can be amazing by themselves. They sound great, but they're even more powerful when it comes from someone that's living them out. Right? So we have all these different quotes, and what's awesome is that even in the world, we don't just like random quotes, but we'll say it's from Dr. Martin Luther King. You know, it's from Gandhi. It's from somebody that we've seen their example in their life, and therefore what they're saying is amazing because it was true to what they did. And we see that in the same thing with Jesus. Matthew 7, verse 28 through 29. It said, when Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teachings. Why? Because he taught as one who had authority and not of or not like the teachers of the law. It wasn't just the great quotes that Jesus was saying, but it was that he came with a place of authority. What gave him authority is that he actually lived it out. He did it. He amazed them because of his life and that his life matched what he preached. They're amazed because of his authority. Has anyone ever told you to do something and you responded with, but I have never seen you do it? Whether you say that out loud or in your heart, you're like, you know, what, you're the one talking? Even though whatever they said may have been great advice, they lacked the authority. And therefore, you didn't go and freak out like Tyrone. See, most people are looking to be in a church that calls them to greatness. But if they don't see people living it out in the church, no matter what we preach from the pulpit, it's not going to go anywhere. To have the courage to not only just see the standard in the Bible, but to set it in our lives. That's what it means to actually have authority when we're preaching the Bible. See, why does the Bible change so many lives that these self-help books in the world will never have an opportunity to do so? Because these self-help books lack the authority of God. When you pick up the Bible, it's a little bit different because the Bible has the authority. My title this morning is Live to Amaze. Point number 1 is that Jesus was amazing. Jesus was amazing. I want you to try and imagine how the world would be if they just understood and followed these 4 principles that Jesus just previously preached here. Contentment, that if the world was just content. Loving friends and foes alike. That it's gone away with lust and all the impure motives. And forgiveness. How would the world be if it just simply did those 4 things? Wouldn't it be amazing? Just catching just those 4 things that Jesus preached. The world would change, would flip upside down. Now imagine yourself without these things hindering you. Maybe you would think the same thing. It's like, I would be amazing if I had these things just in my heart and I lived these out. Now, sometimes we can always just be thinking to ourselves, I would be so amazing, or my life would be so amazing if I just changed these few things. What's awesome, though, is though Jesus preached these things, it wasn't just challenging them, but again, Jesus came from a place of authority where he actually lived these things. See, what's the difference between a lecturer of law and a lawyer? You don't want a lecturer of law defending you in the court. You want a lawyer. There's a difference. Though the other person may lecture you and teach you knowledge, the other one gives you experience. He knows how it's done. He's been there before. He knows how to win these arguments. See, when Jesus spoke, he wasn't just delivering good things. Love your friends. Be content. He lived these things out. And he called these people to actions. Matthew 8, verse 1 through 4, we continue reading. So he preaches these great things, and we're going to see what does his life look like now. When Jesus came down from the mountainside, large crowds followed him. him. A man with leprosy came and knelt down before him and said, "Lord, if you are willing, you may make me clean." Jesus reached out his hands and touched the man. "I am willing," he said. "Be clean." Immediately he was cleansed from his leprosy. Then Jesus said to him, "See that you don't tell anyone, but go and show yourself to the priest and offer the gifts Moses commanded as the testimony to them." Jesus finally concluded his great message on the mountain about not judging people, not letting your right hand know what your left hand is doing, helping the needy. And now we find him actually putting it in action. It wasn't just a great thing that he did, but a great thing that he said, but we see him living it out. Remember when we tried to imagine what the world would be like, or even imagine what yourself would be like if we didn't have these things in our heart? That was Jesus. What we were picturing is everyone acting like Jesus. Jesus was that. See, authority comes from when your living and preaching is in sync. That's when your authority that's when it comes to in your life. Think about even the people in the church. That there are certain things that people in the church have authority to speak on more than others sometimes. It's because they lived it out. If we had a lesson on give up everything and stay faithful, Ian and Margot would be the ones preaching today. If we had a lesson on put your faith above your family, Shelly would be up here preaching the word. If it was share your faith wherever you go, that would be Brandon and Millie.
Let's go, Brandon.
Though hard times may come, God will rescue you. Tegan can preach that. Rufaro, good grades and better faith. That sounds like a good lesson. He's going to preach it next Wednesday maybe. Let's see what happens. See, people are not starving for teaching. They're starving for someone to have authority that actually lives it out. The teachers of the law, they only had words. They were kind of like IKEA instructions without the pictures. It's just a bad experience. That was what the teachers of the law were. They just gave instructions, but they never actually showed them. Jesus was the picture. Jesus was like, hey, do what I am doing. They needed someone to show them what love was and how to treat others. In the same way with churches today, when ministers and teachers do not lead the way, they make their lectures and sermons just intellectual and not practical. They're not pulling from examples of what they're actually doing. Jesus preached this, and now the next scene we see him touching a leper, saying, "I'm willing." Sometimes I do reflect, and sometimes I even comment to you guys sometimes. I think the easiest job in the world would have to be just a local community preacher. They don't do anything. Or at least I don't see them doing anything. Because every day I'm outside, I'm sharing my faith, getting with the people. I'm like, what the heck are they doing? All they have to do is write a sermon and this or that. And now, amen, they may be doing something behind closed doors that I don't know. But for me, I'm just like, I don't know what they're doing. Are they living that life? See, I love how this action was played out, or this scene was played out. Is that when Jesus was asked if he was willing, sometimes it's interesting that we see how this goes, because we think the guy would come to him with leprosy and say, are you able? Can you do this? Is it possible? Do you have time? But he asks him if you are willing. See, most can mistakenly think authority comes from power and forcefulness. That you have authority when you have power to do something. You have authority when you're strong enough or bold enough. No, that's not where authority comes from. Instead, we at least see it here, is that authority comes with a willing heart and a courage to see it through. That's where true authority lies in our faith. Jesus was willing. More than he was able, he was willing. The teachers of the law were just as able to show others love and compassion, maybe not the miracles, but they were at least able to show love and compassion. But what was the thing? They had the power, they were unwilling. At least it wasn't on their mind or any of those things. Jesus was willing. Most times, that's the only thing that's separating you from an amazing life. Not you having the power, not you having the ability, you having the willing heart to go and do it. To follow Jesus. We know that we should, but we're not willing. Loving people is awesome. Giving our heart to relationships feel good. Giving more, being generous is an amazing thing. I know the blessings in the Bible, but I don't know if I'm willing. We know it. See, Jesus amazes me. I think this is awesome. Because not through just the miracles, but through the things that he does that technically I can do and don't. That's what amazes me about Jesus, is the humanity that's shown through him, and that he still fights through those temptations. That That's what amazes me. Yes, walking on water, changing water into wine, but if a magician could do that and he doesn't have the character or the willing heart to love, we would not follow that person. We follow Jesus because of his willing heart and his love. See, he preached it and he was willing to live it out every single time. Every time he preached it, he was willing to live it out. And it wasn't just, all the good things. No matter what the cost was, or no matter how he felt about it, he still did it. Because all of his lessons were not about, hey, let's just go love people, skip town to town and share our faith. That was not everything he preached. Sometimes he put himself in pretty difficult positions. Have you ever done that? You preach something, you're like, dang, now I got to do it. Everyone's already thinking about my abs, but please stop. Mark chapter 8, verse 31 through 33.
Let's go, Sean.
He says this. Some of the things Jesus puts himself in a difficult position. He, being Jesus, Mark 8:31, began to teach that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this, but Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. "Get behind me, Satan," he said. "You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." This would not have been a fun lesson to preach and live out. This was not a fun lesson to go, I'll be the example. Even his friends were like, "Man, Jesus, you have gone too far." See, Peter claimed many great things, but he didn't follow through. "I'll die with you, Jesus. I'll be there. I won't deny you like others." He didn't follow through. See, Jesus is on a level of his own. My question for this morning is, are you amazed by Jesus? Simply that. If not, then you'll never really follow him. See, people had a lot to say about him in the time that he walked the earth, but those who only saw brilliance in him were the ones that followed him. And yes, we're called to live the same life. I get that. But what I'm talking about more right now is that we cannot lose our wonder of Jesus. See, most times people read the Bible and look at Jesus' example, and after reading, they walked away with shame or guilt because they're like, I'm not as strong as him, or I don't love as much, or I'm not as bold. It's not always about you. Stop thinking about yourself and just for a moment, just be amazed by Jesus. See, they mistakenly did that when he was out on the mountain. When he said, hey, don't even lust or you committed adultery. Don't even say raka or contempt to your brother or sister or you already murdered them. It was not to preach a lesson to say everyone now go and obey it. It was that everyone should go walking down the mountainside, man. We've all messed up. We all need to go to God. If you walk down the mountain and say, I got to do this, you already failed. Instead, they should have just been amazed by who Jesus was and the standard that he was setting. The encouragement is, are you just amazed by Jesus? When you read the Bible, are you only just trying to see yourself? Or do you just take a moment and be like, my God is amazing? Yeah. Jesus, I can't even touch him. Yes, we have to learn about his example, but first just get amazed by God. We cannot read the story about Jesus and just always put ourselves in just learn how to be amazed by his conviction and his courage. If you do that, that's kind of like watching the Olympics every year and get mad at yourself that you can't do it. That's what it's like reading the Gospels. If you're like, man, you're sitting on the couch eating your chips, right? We wouldn't do that. We're just amazed about what they're doing. We're grateful that people have put enough heart into skill themselves that way. In the same way, we need to just be amazed by Jesus' image. Like, I just can't wait to follow this guy. His courage, his love, his actions. See, it's not just a challenge, it's for there to be amazed. My first challenge is this week, I want you to just be amazed about who God is. Take a moment just to step back and realize who you're following, who you're loving, who you're praying to every day, what Bible you're holding right now, the words of God. Just get amazed about who Jesus is. Point number 2, you can be amazing. You can be amazing too. If there was one thing that you can change or get strengthened in today that would make you amazing, what would it be? Some of us may have to think a little bit longer, but some of us like, oh, my courage, my prayer life, my this, my that. But I want to show you that actually, as we continue the story about Jesus interacting with different people, that we all have an opportunity to amaze, but it may not be in the way that you're thinking. Not just you growing in your preaching or your singing or any of these things, but there's something that all of us have an opportunity to grow in that can amaze our God. See, Jesus is about to head back to Capernaum, his home base, and he's going to interact with somebody who doesn't even come from a Jewish believing background, who yet is going to amaze him. And yes, we can amaze God in the same way. Matthew chapter 8, verse 5 through 13. When Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him, asking for help. "Lord," he said, "my servant lies at home paralyzed, suffering terribly." Jesus said to him, "Shall I come and heal him?" The centurion replied, "Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof, but just say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. I tell this one, 'Go,' and he goes, and that one, 'Come,' and he comes. I say to my servant, 'Do this,' and he does it." When Jesus heard this, he was amazed, and said to those following him, "Truly I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith. I say to you that many will come from the east and the west, and will take their place at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the subjects of the kingdom will be thrown outside into darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Then Jesus said to the centurion, "Go, let it be done just as you believed it would." And his servant was healed at that moment. We see Jesus entering his hometown, his home base here, and a centurion comes up asking him for help. Now, a centurion, think of this as just a Roman officer in the army of Rome. He commanded about 80 soldiers, and he was paid twice as much as a legionnaire. How much does a legionnaire get paid? That's for... Throughout this story, though, we see a few things about his character, which is pretty cool. We see, though he's in a place of authority, this officer, he actually feels the pain of this lonely servant in his house. That's pretty cool. He has this compassion and this heart. He was a loving and respecting man. In the account of Luke, we actually see that he helps, rebuild one of the synagogues. Another thing we see is that he's not proud. He's very humble. He's willing to ask for help. He's a person in authority, and yet he's going out to this lonely Jewish man. He's a Roman legionnaire. Most of Rome always saw themselves better than those who they occupied. At the end of it as well is that, again, he was humble to get the advice from Jesus. Just a lonely Jew. But of all these different things, these character things that we would be impressed by, this did not sway Jesus at all. Right? It wasn't those just characteristics. He was an example to the world, but to Jesus, he was amazed by something else. It wasn't just his humility. It wasn't just his status or any of those things. Jesus was amazed because of his understanding of faith. What fascinated Jesus was that while he was walking around and coaching all these religious people of his day that refused to believe in him, even though he showed the actions and the words, here was a man who showed real faith. Faith through actions. He communicated a few things. He was saying to Jesus, "Hey, I recognize that you are greater than me, that you are someone with power. I understand that. And your power is not limited by your physical appearance or where you are. You don't actually have to be there. All you have to do is say the words. I recognize that in you." And he also believed that he loved people, that he was willing to help out just a little servant. Right? In one way or another, this officer could have went to Caesar, a person who was super powerful, but he probably knew this guy doesn't love this little servant. He's like, "I know this person has authority. I know you can do it, and I know that you love." This man wasn't even a Jew. He didn't even really believe in God. He maybe believed in many gods. We don't know. But he saw something different in Jesus. Even today, we can jump from excuse to excuse of why we don't have faith in our life. Or at least why we don't put it in action. Why we can't obey. Why having that type of faith and that type of dedication to our God is just seen as unrealistic. Well, the fact is, the reason we do that is because true faith can be quite scary to really step out. But the excuses of why you can't are the exact reasons why God wants to do it. See, this is true faith, where he just said it. God, I know it. I know what you can do, and I know it's going to happen. Faith is falling and trusting God will catch you, not waiting for him to build you a bridge. Faith is looking at your zero account, still being willing to give, even though the money hasn't come in. See, faith is simply obeying, not delaying. It's not waiting until things change. What have you been doing without faith? Are you amazing your God right now? There's not a characteristic, humility, love, compassion, all those different things that will replace faith. There is not one. See, we are not here to amaze man, but to amaze God. This cannot be done by our character, but simply the strength of our faith. Yes, character will help be a structure to our faith, but it cannot substitute it. And we all think that, right? We would all rather follow a faithful man to God, a person who understands God and is faithful, than a person with character. Though the man with faith, you follow him, will make a lot of mistakes, but you will also see a lot of miracles. While the other one, you may be stable and content and not have much going on, but you won't see the miracles. It all comes down to our faith. And the thing that we struggle with, though, is faith is an interesting thing where you have to possess, but it's nothing about you. It has nothing to do with you. The most amazing thing about you doesn't even have to do with you. It's just you have faith in God, not faith in yourself. And so that's what happens, is that we think faith is meaning believing and doing something and reaching beyond ourselves. It has nothing to do with that. It's that God can do it.
Come on.
It's God can do it. And you're stuck in not growing in your faith because you're thinking about yourself.
Come on, Sean.
That happens a lot, though. Even dating couples, sometimes that happens. Where the most amazing thing about you is that you're dating someone else. Maybe Tyrone has seen this a lot, where Tyrone gets hugged. Hey, brother, where's Sarah? Where's Sarah? Like, bro, can you move? Where's Sarah? I remember when Tegan went out to America for a conference, and this was back before we were dating, I believe. She went to a GLC in America. And when I came back afterwards, she's like, oh, you're Tegan's boyfriend. How dare, I am the missionary, no. You're Tegan's boyfriend. Or especially it happens whenever, usually as a church, we share for people's birthdays. And, being married, though, is a little bit different. Because when people will share about me at my birthday, they'll almost be like holding Tegan and be like, you guys are great, and like petting Tegan's hair. And like, like they share more about Tegan sometimes than me. And I'm like, amen, that's a great thing to be known for, though, at least. But is that why you're struggling with your faith? Is because you're thinking more, I got to do something great. No, you have to think about God. The most amazing thing about you is not you. Is that you're simply trusting in God. If your actions done in faith today and how you've been living your life so far were the only lessons that you taught, what would those around you learn? Would you lack lessons in sermons? Would you have many examples that you can say, hey, do this in faith? Would you run out of material of what you can preach? See, this man taught us more about faith than any lectures of the religious. Just simply by how he was just relying on God. Your faith is everything. Everything. With it, you can impress God. Without it, you can't even please Him. Hebrews 11:6. And without faith, it is impossible to please God. Because anyone who comes to Him must believe that He exists and that He rewards those who earnestly seek Him. It was awesome. Back in America, Los Angeles, when I was growing in my faith and becoming like a Bible talk leader and everything, an unpaid intern, I had a good friend named Clark who was leading another Bible discussion before. Actually, no, he wasn't leading at that point in time. What was going on is that his Bible talk leader was struggling in his faith. And he was end up going to move to a different church just to be able to get strengthened in one of our sister churches around the world. And so, there was Clark who just got baptized like maybe 2 months months ago or something along those lines. And another brother, and there was just like 2 other sisters and a person who just recently got baptized again, another brother that was like a week old. And so our evangelist at the moment, he went up to Clark and he was kind of preparing like, okay, I got to talk to him about that. We're going to have to close down the Bible discussion. There's just no one who can lead it. And it was going to get like absorbed by other discussions and people were going to broke apart. And so he brings in Clark, and Clark's like, I know what you're going to say. I know it's going to be hard, but I'm going to do my best to lead the group. I'm just going to need you to pray for me. And Tim, the evangelist, was like, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is that a leader? And he's like, yeah, okay, let's do it. And he just went for it. It's awesome when you just see somebody just step out in faith. Yeah. His authority did not come from his ability, his power, his knowledge. It again came from his willing heart. Yeah. See, when you just step out of faith, it's awesome. It was even a lot of fun. Yesterday as a church, we went out and decked the halls at Mission Bay. What we did is we went out and just shared our faith with every single person that we can see. And what's really cool about that is that when you do that, you have to share with everyone. Meaning, you can't lack faith for the next person. I don't know if you ever do that normally, where you're like, I don't know if this person's really open or not. But when you just deck the halls, when you just share with every single person, you have to have faith. You go out there and do it. Who are you, or what are you not doing stepping out in faith? Who are you not sharing your faith with? How do you think about going to the conference in February? Where's your faith at? Well, where's your faith in bringing people to the Christmas service next week? How is our faith? And it's not about you just doing it, but again, remembering it's all about God and His strength. My last challenge here is I want you to do something faithful this week that can be a lesson. You can almost take from as an example of living in faith. That when you preach, you go like, I did it. Doesn't have to be a successful story either. We don't care about that. It's simply that you stepped out for your God. In conclusion, we get to see here that Jesus was amazing. That if we walk away from today, yes, we have to live in His footsteps and everything, but Jesus is in a class of His own. And we have to always remember that Jesus is awesome. It doesn't mean that we, dwindle our servitude to Him, but it just means we have to be reminded to be amazed by our God in Jesus. There is no one like Jesus, fiction or fact, or non-fiction. And as well, let's continue to amaze our God, not just by our character or our duties or our responsibilities, but by our faith. Thank you very much.